Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a precipice, peering into the abyss of your own life. Your mind is cluttered with thoughts, so many thoughts. What should I do next? What if I fail again? The weight of those questions presses down on your chest, and the effort to find answers feels overwhelming. You believe you need to push, strive, to mold your life into something that feels right. But what if that effort, the constant, exhausting strain, wasn't the key to change? What if, instead of striving to force transformation, the very act of stepping back could bring the most profound shift? The truth is, we've been taught that change is something we must chase. The self-help books, the motivational speakers, the endless list of shoulds, they all tell us we must exert effort, manipulate ourselves into the right shape, push harder, reach higher. But is this the real path to transformation? What if we've misunderstood the very nature of change? In the teachings of Krishnamurti, a profound and unsettling truth emerges. Change doesn't come from effort. It comes from an act of observation, a deep, non-judgmental attention to what is. This might sound paradoxical, even frustrating. We're conditioned to believe that effort is the currency of progress, that without struggle there is no gain. And yet, Krishnamurti invites us into a quieter, more radical space. The possibility that true transformation arises when we stop forcing it. Consider the way you look at yourself. There's a story you've built about who you are, your self-image, the carefully constructed persona that you believe defines you. You've worked hard to create this image. Perhaps you've shaped it through accomplishments, through the roles you play, through the approval you've earned from others. But that image, as comforting as it might seem, is a prison. It's a construct, built on the foundation of the past, a reflection of the stories you've told yourself over time. The more effort you put into maintaining that image, the more distant you become from the essence of who you truly are. But what if you stopped trying to maintain that image? What if you allowed yourself to see beyond the constructed self and looked instead at the truth of your experience? In that moment of attention, you might discover something surprising. The weight of effort begins to lift. You realize that you are not what you thought you were. The truth of who you are is not bound by the narrow confines of self-image, nor by the endless striving to uphold that image. Now, let's take a step back. Look at your life, what you've done, what you've strived for. How much of it has been driven by the need for validation? How much of it has been shaped by the belief that you must be something or someone to be worthy? These questions are uncomfortable because they point to something we often want to avoid, the awareness of how deeply we are entangled in the web of our own desires, fears, and judgments. But the healing doesn't come from forcing ourselves into a new mold, from striving to be different. The healing comes from awareness, recognizing the forces that drive us, and seeing them without judgment. This is where Krishnamurti's teachings intersect with modern psychology. In order to change, you must first observe. You must pay attention to the forces that shape your actions, your fears, your desires, your regrets. And as you observe, something remarkable begins to happen. The need to control or manipulate fades. You are no longer pushing against your own nature. Instead, you are in a state of receptivity, of listening. It's in this space of listening, of non-attachment, that transformation occurs. It's not a change that comes from effort, from pushing against the world. It's a transformation that happens when you stop fighting it. You simply allow yourself to be present with what is. You stop measuring, stop comparing, stop running from the discomfort. And in that openness, in that raw vulnerability, you create the space for something new to emerge. This isn't just a philosophical idea. It's a psychological truth that resonates with the experiences of those who have undergone deep healing. When we stop grasping, when we stop trying to control, we open ourselves to the flow of life. And in that flow, change becomes effortless. You may wonder, how do you start this process? It begins with a simple yet profound shift in perspective. Instead of seeking to change your life, You must change how you relate to it. Instead of trying to fix yourself, you must learn to accept yourself as you are, without the need for validation, without the pressure to be better. And in that acceptance, in that surrender, you will find the freedom to become who you were always meant to be. So, what if change doesn't come from effort? What if the key to transformation lies not in what you do, but in how you see? The answer is simple yet profound. Change is born in the stillness of observation. It arises in the space between the noise of your mind and the quiet of your true self. And it is in this space, this effortless space, that freedom is found.
You see, the mind is relentless. It churns, it judges, it compares, it seeks validation. It has been conditioned to constantly strive for something that feels like it will complete us, that will make us whole. But the truth, as Krishnamurti reveals, is that this relentless pursuit only deepens our fragmentation. The more the mind pushes, the further it distances itself from the truth of what is. The more effort we exert, the more we are caught in the cycle of striving, which becomes its own form of suffering. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever experienced the feeling of running, but not knowing where you're going? The exertion, the sweat, the internal chatter, yet you're still not closer to where you want to be. It's an exhausting paradox. You think that by doing more, by forcing change, you'll find peace, but the peace you're seeking is never within reach. It slips through your fingers the more tightly you try to grip it. Krishnamurti invites you to step back from this cycle. He asks you to question the very foundation of your seeking. What if your endless striving, your constant pursuit of change, wasn't the answer at all? What if, in fact, it was the very thing keeping you from finding the peace you desire? This is the essence of effortless transformation, letting go of the pursuit, surrendering the need to control, and allowing life to reveal its truth. At the core of this teaching is the profound realization that we are not separate from the world around us. We have been taught to view ourselves as individuals, as isolated beings working tirelessly to shape the world to fit our desires. But when we take a step back and observe with clarity, we see that we are not separate from the flow of life. We are not isolated entities battling against the current. We are part of the current itself, flowing with it, breathing in its rhythm. This is not the world as we thought it was. This is the world as it truly is, fluid, interconnected, and alive. Now, let's turn inward for a moment. Reflect on the way you experience the world. When you look at yourself in the mirror, what do you see? Do you see a person defined by their achievements, their failures, their relationships? Are you consumed by the story you've constructed about who you are? Or do you see a being in this very moment untouched by the weight of past identities and future aspirations? This is the challenge lies. In peeling away the layers of self-image that you have so diligently constructed over the years. The effort, the pushing, the striving, it all comes from this need to protect the self-image, to safeguard the identity you've built. But in doing so, you trap yourself in a never-ending cycle of insecurity. You cannot change from a place of fear, from a place of self-doubt, because that place is rooted in the past. Krishnamurti speaks of this illusion of the self, this false construct that we hold so tightly. He says, the self is an illusion, but we live with it as though it were real. The more you cling to that illusion, the more fragmented you become. You become trapped in a cycle of self-judgment and fear of what others think. You measure your worth by the standards of society, by the expectations placed upon you, and by the constant comparison to others. But here's the truth. You are not your image. You are not the person you think you should be. You are the presence, the awareness, the essence that lies beyond the story you tell yourself. When you realize this, the need for effort diminishes. There is no need to fight for a self that isn't real. There is only the need to see what is, to observe the mind without judgment, to see the patterns that keep you confined. And in that observation, you start to notice something extraordinary. The effort to change becomes unnecessary. You stop chasing transformation, and instead, transformation happens naturally. The moment you let go of the desire to change, the moment you stop running from yourself, you are free to become who you truly are. This is the essence of effortless transformation: the willingness to let go, to observe, and to be present with what is. Modern psychology has come to recognize that true healing does not come from forcing change, but from allowing awareness to reveal the patterns that bind us. Trauma, fear, and insecurity are not overcome through willpower or self-discipline. They are healed through the simple act of noticing them, of being with them without attachment. When you stop fighting the pain, the fear, the desire, you create the space for healing to occur. And it is this space, this openness, that allows for true transformation. It's a space where the mind is not constantly striving, where the heart is not closed off in fear. It's a space where you can listen to yourself, not through the lens of judgment, but with compassion. And in this listening, you find the freedom to change, not because you are trying, but because you have stopped trying to be something else. This is the power of seeing things as they truly are. When you see without distortion, without the filter of your past experiences, you are no longer bound by them. The past no longer dictates your future. The self-image no longer holds power over you. And in that freedom, you begin to see the world differently. You see it not as something to conquer, but as something to experience, fully, without the need for validation. So, as you reflect on your life, ask yourself, where is your effort coming from? Is it coming from a place of fear, a need to control, or a desire to be something you are not? Or is it coming from a deep, compassionate observation, a willingness to see things as they truly are, without distortion or judgment? True transformation comes when you stop striving and start seeing. When you embrace the stillness of awareness, you will find that change happens effortlessly. The world will change, not because you force it, but because you have allowed yourself to see it clearly. And in that clarity, you are free.
As you continue to reflect, you begin to notice something strange. The more you let go of the need to control, the more the world around you seems to shift. The weight of your thoughts, the grip of your fears begins to loosen. At first, this feels unsettling. We have been conditioned to believe that control is the key to success, that without effort, we are doomed to drift aimlessly through life. And yet, the more you observe, the more you begin to see that this pursuit of control only perpetuates the very anxiety it seeks to calm. Consider the way the world operates. The sun rises and sets without any effort. The river flows without struggling against the rocks in its path. Trees grow without worrying about whether they are tall enough or wide enough. Nature operates in a rhythm of surrender, of allowing things to unfold as they will. And yet, as human beings, we impose our will on everything. We force growth. We manipulate circumstances. We push ourselves to become something we think we should be. But what if this pushing is exactly what is keeping us from the peace we seek? What if peace, like nature, is found in the flow, not in the effort? This is the profound paradox that Krishnamurti invites you to explore. Real transformation is not a matter of forcing your life into shape, but of learning to flow with it, of allowing your mind to release its hold on the constant need for control. You cannot force the flower to bloom. It blooms when the conditions are right. And so it is with you. Transformation happens when the conditions of your mind and heart are right, not when you try to force them into place. It happens when you let go of the struggle and allow yourself to be present in this moment, free from the judgments of what you think you should be. This doesn't mean that you do nothing. It doesn't mean you sit idly by waiting for the world to change. Rather, it means you act with full awareness, without the pressure to achieve. You take action when it feels right, but without attachment to the outcome. You move with the flow of life, not against it. The action that arises from this state of being is far more powerful than any action taken from the need to prove something to yourself or to others. Consider for a moment the way you respond to challenges. When something difficult arises, how do you react? Do you immediately feel the need to control the situation, to fix it, to make it go away? Or can you pause, breathe, and observe the situation without the need to manipulate it? In that pause, in that moment of non-reactivity, there is space for clarity. In that space, you begin to see the situation not as a problem to be solved, but as an experience to be understood. And in understanding, transformation naturally occurs. This is where the magic lies, the shift from seeing challenges as obstacles to seeing them as opportunities for growth. When you stop fighting against the flow of life, you start to see that each moment, no matter how difficult, is an opportunity to deepen your understanding. Each moment is an opportunity to see the truth of yourself and the world around you, without the filter of your fears and desires. And in that seeing, transformation happens. It is not forced, but allowed. It is effortless because you have stopped struggling. Krishnamurti speaks of freedom in a way that few others do. Freedom, he says, is not the freedom to do what we want. It is not the freedom to act according to our desires and impulses. True freedom is the freedom from the self, the freedom from the constant striving, the constant pushing, the constant need to control. It is the freedom to be, to exist, without the weight of self-judgment or external expectation. And this freedom, this liberation, arises not from effort, but from awareness. As you continue to observe the mind, you begin to understand that the source of your suffering is not the world around you, but the way you relate to it. The mind, in its desperate attempt to control, creates its own suffering. But when you release the need for control, when you allow yourself to simply be present, the suffering dissolves. This is the core of Krishnamurti's teaching, that liberation comes from within, through the awareness of what is. But this awareness, however, is not something you can force. It is not something that comes from the effort of trying to fix yourself. It arises naturally when you stop imposing your will on the world, when you stop reacting and start observing. This is the state of effortless transformation, the moment when you stop trying to control and instead allow life to unfold as it is. But how do you reach this state? How do you begin to let go of the need to control, the need for validation, the need to force change? The answer is simple: through attention. Attention is the key to unlocking this freedom. When you pay attention, truly pay attention to the present moment without the interference of past conditioning or future desires, you begin to see things as they truly are. And in that seeing, transformation happens effortlessly. The mind may try to resist, it may try to pull you back into the familiar patterns of effort and control, but if you continue to observe, if you continue to be present with what is, the mind begins to soften. The grip of the ego loosens, and in its place, there is clarity, there is peace. And in that peace, you find the freedom to change, not because you are trying to, but because you have stopped trying to control. This is the essence of effortless transformation. It is not something you do, it is something you allow. When you stop pushing, when you stop striving, when you stop trying to fit yourself into a mold that is not yours, you make space for the truth to reveal itself. And in that revelation, change happens.
As you continue to observe, you may begin to notice how often the mind seeks to control, to shape, to force outcomes. It's as if the mind believes that through sheer willpower, it can bend life to its desires, that it can sculpt the future by grinding against the present. But in this struggle, there is a profound disconnection. You are no longer living in the flow of the moment, but fighting against it. You are not present with what is, but entangled in what you think should be. This is where Krishnamurti's wisdom cuts through. You are not your thoughts. You are not the endless stream of desires, fears, or memories that flood your mind. These are merely passing phenomena, like clouds in the sky. And yet, most of us identify so deeply with these thoughts that we forget our true nature. We become convinced that if we just work hard enough, we can change the shape of our lives. But the truth is, it is not through the manipulation of your thoughts or the effort of will that true change occurs. True change comes through seeing the nature of the mind itself. This shift in perception can feel unnerving at first. After all, it's counter to everything you've been taught about success and achievement. But in that very discomfort lies the potential for deep transformation. The discomfort arises because, for the first time, you are being asked to let go of control, to release the need to be in charge. And that is precisely where the freedom lies. When you are no longer trying to control your thoughts, no longer trying to control your life, you open up to something much greater than yourself. You begin to see that life itself is the greatest teacher. Every experience, every interaction, every moment holds a lesson if you are willing to listen. And listening in this sense is not a passive activity. It is an active state of awareness, a state of being completely attuned to what is happening in the present. It's about observing without the interference of the past, without the judgment of the future. This is the essence of Krishnamurti's call for attention, to truly see the world as it is, without the lens of your own desires or fears clouding your perception. And as you deepen this attention, you begin to understand that every moment is a doorway to transformation. When you stop trying to control, when you stop labeling everything, you begin to see the truth of what is. And it is in this seeing, in this awareness, that you begin to change. But this change is not the result of effort. It is the natural outcome of being fully present with life, of no longer resisting what is. Consider the times when you've struggled to change something about yourself. Perhaps you've tried to let go of a habit, or you've worked tirelessly to become a better person. The more effort you put into these things, the more elusive they seem. It's as if the harder you try, the more you reinforce the very patterns you are trying to break. But when you stop trying, when you simply observe the habit without judgment or resistance, you create the space for it to dissolve on its own. This is the paradox of transformation. By letting go of the need to change, by allowing yourself to be fully present with what is, you allow the very change you seek to occur naturally. The mind begins to loosen its grip, the patterns of thought begin to fade, and in that space, new possibilities emerge. It's not that you are doing something, it's that you are no longer blocking the flow of life. You are no longer forcing yourself into a mold, but allowing yourself to be shaped by the natural current of existence. In the realm of relationships, this principle holds profound significance. How often do we try to change others, to control how they see us or behave? We approach relationships with expectations, with the desire to mold the other person into something that fits our narrative. But this effort is rooted in insecurity. It comes from a place of fear that if the other person doesn't meet our needs, we will not be complete. But when you stop striving to control, when you stop manipulating your relationships for personal gain, something remarkable happens. True connection can form. True intimacy is not the result of effort or manipulation. It arises when you allow yourself to fully see the other person without judgment, without the need to change them. When you drop the mask, when you let go of the self-image that you believe you must uphold, you create the space for real connection to unfold. This is the beauty of attention. It brings you closer to yourself, to others, and to the world. And in that closeness, you are transformed. Not because you are trying to change, but because you are finally allowing yourself to be present with what is. In this state of presence, you begin to notice the ways in which the ego tries to assert itself. It will resist. It will try to convince you that you need to do more, that you need to prove something. But in that moment of awareness, you can choose to see it for what it is: a distraction, a conditioned response, a story that has no truth. When you no longer identify with the ego, when you cease to give it the power to dictate your actions, you experience a sense of freedom that is unimaginable. You are no longer bound by the stories of who you think you are or who you think you should be. You are simply being, and in that being, you are whole. So the question remains, how do you begin to release the grip of effort? The answer lies in surrendering to the present moment. When you stop striving, when you cease to chase after an idealized version of yourself, you open yourself up to a deeper, more authentic experience of life. And in that openness, you will discover that the transformation you seek was never a result of effort. It was always there waiting for you to notice.
As you let go of the relentless drive to achieve, you may start to notice something subtle but profound happening within you. The constant noise in your mind, the stream of thoughts and desires that once controlled you, begins to quiet. And in this silence, you begin to feel something you might have forgotten existed: peace. It's a peace that doesn't come from accomplishment or approval, but from simply being, from shedding the layers of who you thought you should be, and embracing the raw truth of who you are. Krishnamurti speaks of this kind of peace as not the absence of conflict, but the cessation of the conflict within. It is the moment when the mind stops battling with itself, when it ceases its incessant striving for something better, for something other than what is. And in that cessation, a deeper understanding arises, that peace is not something to be attained. It is the natural state of being once the distractions are cleared away. This peace is not passive, nor is it the kind of peace that comes from escaping the world. It is an active, vibrant peace, one that exists in the midst of life's turmoil, in the face of its challenges. It is not the peace of avoidance, but the peace that comes from being fully present with what is. When you stop trying to manipulate the world around you, when you stop trying to force yourself into a mold that is not truly yours, you start to see life as it truly is. And in that seeing, peace arises naturally. The more you observe the mind, the more you begin to understand that the conflict lies not in the world, but in the way you relate to it. The world simply is. It does not need to be fixed. The real work, the real transformation, is in the way you perceive and relate to the world. When you let go of the need to control, to change, to manipulate, you begin to see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. And in that seeing, you are liberated from the cycle of effort. It's in this space of awareness that you also begin to see the nature of your relationships and how they mirror your relationship with yourself. Think about the way you engage with others. How much of your interaction is driven by the need for approval, the need for validation? How often do you find yourself changing your behavior, your words, your actions to fit what you think the other person wants from you? This is the dance of effort, the constant trying to fit yourself into a mold that is not truly yours. But in the space of awareness, in the quiet of your mind, you begin to see that the people around you are not obstacles to be managed, but beings to be understood. You no longer need to manipulate them, control them, or change them. You simply need to see them as they are, without judgment, without expectation. This is the heart of true intimacy, the ability to be with another person without the filter of your own desires, your own fears, your own insecurities. And in that space, you create the conditions for genuine connection to arise. True intimacy is not about controlling or shaping the other person to fit your needs. It's about the willingness to meet them where they are, to accept them without judgment, to listen to them without trying to change them.
It is in this deep acceptance that you allow the relationship to evolve, to grow in its own time without forcing it into a predetermined shape. And in this freedom, the relationship can become something deeper, more authentic, more real. This is the essence of Krishnamurti's teaching, that true change arises when you stop trying to change, when you stop forcing yourself or others into a mold. The transformation that you seek is not a product of effort. It is the result of simply being present with what is. It is the natural outcome of releasing the need to control, the need to manipulate, the need to force life into a shape that suits your desires. And as you begin to live from this place of awareness, something incredible happens. You stop measuring yourself against external standards. You stop comparing yourself to others. You stop looking for validation in the approval of others, in the achievements you have or have not accomplished. You begin to recognize that you are enough, just as you are. The constant striving to prove your worth dissolves, and in its place, a deep sense of inner peace and wholeness arises. This peace is not something you can seek outside of yourself. It is not something you can chase, achieve, or attain. It is the natural state of being when you stop trying to change, when you stop pushing, when you stop forcing life into a shape that suits your desires. And in this peace, this deep acceptance of what is true transformation occurs. It is not a transformation that happens through effort, through pushing against the current, through struggling to become something else. It is a transformation that happens when you stop fighting, when you stop resisting, when you simply allow life to unfold as it will. This is the paradox of transformation. It is not something that you do. It is something that happens when you cease to do. It is not the result of effort, but the natural outcome of surrender. And it is in that surrender, when you let go of the need to control, the need to be something else, that true freedom is found. In the very act of seeing the false as false and truth as truth, there is liberation.